into dreams. Light bleeds into truth. Everything unforgiven. Everything becoming hollow. Loneliness consumes. And there is no way back. The places you played, the places you called home, the people you thought you loved, all of them reduced to a memory of another life. A life you never lived. All the yesterdays that can't form a tomorrow. All the tomorrows that never came from yesterday. A new beginning. Because forever is never forever.
As a shepherd, you must walk with your sheep a lot because they'll follow you and they begin to trust you.
Presentation.
Okay, kids, here we are at the slavery exhibit. Now, as you can see, the slaves were kidnapped from their homes, chained together for weeks. They would cram them onto these ships in very appalling conditions.
Thousands of women and children are being smuggled across the border.
Sexual trafficking of children.
As you can see right here, they were treated like animals. They worked all day long for no pay.
In sweatshops raided by police. Children forced into slave labor.
Some of the slave masters were very cruel. They whipped them and they beat them, as you can see in some of these pictures.
Well, brutal, even fatal.
So, before moving on, are there any questions?
Does this still happen today?
We return to this prophecy that at the end of history there will be slavery. The greatest slavery of all is not the slavery which is behind us, but the slavery which is ahead of us.
Can you tell which of these children was not born free? Can you tell which of these children was not born equal? Can you tell which of these children does not deserve to be treated with dignity? We can't either.
What they're doing. Let's bear in mind, we are all equal. If we are all equal, who has the right to make any demands upon you? Who has the right to do anything to command you, demand you, put orders on you? Who has the power? No one.
How are you going to get people to change? Small acts of defiance, he says. I'm like, what do you mean by that? Never make a scene, just left him. Said that I didn't want to be part of his revolution, that I didn't want to see him again. But he phones me, tells me he misses me and wants to see me. So I do. I see him again. I got him all wrong, because what he's doing isn't bad. You have to look at the bigger picture. What's good for everyone?
When you try to understand the world, one of the first things you'll see is that there are many structures of control that keep almost everyone in check and keep almost everyone repressed to some degree. And when people finally understand some of these structures of control, the first reaction is that they get very frustrated, and some people stay with that frustration for their entire lives. They just run around complaining about the system being fixed against them, and there's nothing anyone can do about it. Personal freedom is something that only you are responsible for, and if you ever stop working for it, you'll lose it.
Let me tell you why you're here. You're here because you know something. What you know you can't explain, but you feel it. You felt it your entire life, that there's something wrong with the world. You don't know what it is, but it's there, like a splinter in your mind, driving you mad. It is this feeling that has brought you to me. Do you know what I'm talking about?
The Matrix.
Do you want to know what it is? The Matrix is everywhere. It is all around us. Even now, in this very room. You can see it when you look out your window or when you turn on your television. You can feel it when you go to work, when you go to church, when you pay your taxes. It is the world that has been pulled over your eyes to blind you from the truth.
What truth?
That you are a slave, Neo. Like everyone else, you were born into bondage, born into a prison that you cannot smell or taste or touch. A prison for your mind.
A common misconception among people is that any rule or regulation that governs them falls under one category, law. But there are many other forms of law that people abide by without realizing that they simply do not apply to them. Another misconception is that a nation's constitution gives us our rights. A constitution does nothing more than list the rights that we already have. We are born with inalienable rights, endowed to us by our Creator. They are not given to us, and they cannot be given away. The most a person can do with a right is choose whether to exercise it or not. Maritime Admiralty law is what's known as the law of the water. It is superseded by civil law and only applies to those who willingly contract themselves into it. The definition of Admiralty law is a body of private international law governing the relationships between private entities which operate vessels on the oceans. Let's look at how and why a form of law that is fashioned to govern corporations, businesses, and vessels has imposed its rule over natural human beings. This is all done through a form of word magic. A simple perversion of language has made it possible to convince people around the world that these alternative laws apply to them. One of the predominant beliefs in modern culture is that licenses, permits, registrations, and other forms of documentation are required to operate motor vehicles, use public roads, build structures and establishments, engage in free enterprise, and much more. Sadly, these beliefs are based on little to no investigation whatsoever, and are false. This belief structure is perpetuated by Maritime Admiralty law. This form of law was originally created to govern ships docking in foreign nations for the import or export of products and resources. It deals with banking and merchant affairs, not civil affairs. When a product is taken off of a ship and brought into a foreign land, that nation takes custody of the resource and accounts for it with a certificate. That certificate marks the birth date of that product in the custody of the respective nation. Think of why it is supposedly required to have a certificate of live birth in the first place. The Barron's Dictionary of Banking Terms defines a certificate as a paper establishing an ownership claim. So right there, we notice that everyone with a birth certificate is defined as being owned. People are used as collateral with other nations because the U.S. is bankrupt. The United States declared bankruptcy on March 9th of 1933. At this point, the U.S. began taking out loans from a private, non-government affiliated corporation called the Federal Reserve. With no money to pay back the loans, the United States began using the citizens as collateral. All birth and marriage certificates are literally warehouse receipts. Just look at the similarities of warehouse receipts and birth certificates. Both document the date of issue, a serial number, registration number or receipt number, a description of the product, and an authorized informant to notify the appropriate government agency. With all of this information being readily available, the majority of people are unaware of their involvement with Maritime Admiralty law. This is possible through the manipulation of language. This Admiralty law changed the meaning of the word person from a natural living person to a corporation. Driver's licenses, vehicle registrations, auto insurance forms, building permits, gun permits, work permits, tax filing documents, birth and death certificates, traffic citations, and many other forms of documentation that were once believed to be absolutely necessary only apply to persons or corporations. Upon signing such a legal document, you are indirectly waiving your rights under the Constitution and lowering your status to that of a corporation that is created with the same exact name as you. The only way to reconcile your true name from the name of the corporation is to take notice that the corporation has its name in all capital letters. This is known as capitis diminutia maxima.
There are two kinds of law on the earth, as I've said. One is called civil law, which is the law of the land, and one is called maritime admiralty, which is called the law of water. The maritime admiralty is banking law, and the law on the maritime admiralty says that you, because you came out of your mother's water, are a maritime admiralty product. This is why the ship is sitting in its berth and is tied to the dock, and the captain has to give a certificate of manifest to the port authorities, because money is changing hands. This is why when you were born, you have to have a birth certificate. You are a maritime admiralty product. And therefore your birth certificate is signed by your mother. And where your mother signed on the birth certificate, get it, you will see it does not say parent or mother, it says informant. Your mother was informing the bank that she has just produced another product to be bought and sold. England, the British Crown, through international banking, owns your physical body, and that's the law. And if you could get your original birth certificate back, you would find that on the back of the birth certificate are all the banks around the world. All over the world, banks have used your birth certificate because you are a stock in a maritime admiralty banking scheme where you make money for banks. Consequently, the corporation and government and people who want to control you, they create a second you, and that second you that they control, that they created, is all capital letters. Check it out. Anytime you get a bill, get a lawsuit, you get a fine, a ticket, somebody sends you a bill from the Department of Water and Power, check it out on your driver's license, on your Social Security card, on your insurance card, anything, period, anything having to do with business, your name will always be all capital letters, because only all capital letters can be dealt with by banks and government. Anytime you have a name upper or lowercase, that applies to you. I've got no control of you. You sign a contract in which your name is in all capital letters, now I can take it to court.
Who owns the rain? Turns out, not you. You're actually breaking the law if you try to capture rain falling onto your roof and pour it on your flower bed.
A prominent Utah car dealer found that out when he tried to do something good for the environment. John Hollenhurst has the surprising story.
Rebecca Nelson captures rainwater in a barrel and she pours it on her plants.
We can fill up a barrel in one rainstorm, so it seems a waste to let it just fall into the gravel.
Car dealer Mark Miller wanted to do pretty much the same thing on a bigger scale. He collects rainwater on the roof of his new building, stores it in a cistern, and hopes to clean cars with it in a new water-efficient car wash. But without a valid water right, state officials say he can't legally divert rainwater.
I was surprised. We thought it was our water.
We all know that there's some crazy stuff happening out there, eh? I mean, we've got government agents coming up to us, telling us that we're all equal. They make demands upon us that we know we could never make upon them. Where's the equality? On the screen, there's a little baby. That's Elizabeth Annie Lane. She's a little baby, came into my life about 4.5 years ago. 2 days after the birth of Elizabeth, ministry workers came in, removed her. No investigation, no assessment. Claimed she only had one caregiver. We said, you're wrong. We're a family. We're going to meet you in court. They told us if we tried doing that, they'd see to it. She spent the first 5 years of her life going from foster home to foster home to foster home. Shut me up in court, cost me my baby. Folks, anyone who knows me, shutting me up even for a moment is a bit of a trick. They cost me my baby. I sat down with their Black's Law Dictionary on one side, Bouvier's on the other. I had an Old English dictionary. I looked up every single word in there. It took me 3 days and I finally saw it. Have you ever seen these laser pictures? You see nothing until you focus past it, and then a 3D picture pops into your head. Have you seen those? This is exactly what I saw when I did my statute deconstruction. I looked through and I suddenly saw what they were doing. This is their little trick. You are not obliged to register your children. If you do, it is at that point that you're creating a legal entity or a person. You are associating this person with your offspring. You are abandoning ownership or title to that person, and the government is seizing that under the laws of maritime salvage. It becomes their chattel property. They use it as collateral to float loans or to float bonds for loans. When they come to remove a child, they're not acting on the human being at all. They're removing the legal entity you created and abandoned and they now have title to. That's your person. That is what the government acts upon. A human being and a person are not the same thing. We've been led to believe that they are, but they're not. In Black's Law Dictionary, you'll find a definition of a person, and it says, a human being is not a person because he is a human being, but because rights and duties have been ascribed to him. Specifically, the person is that legal subject or substance of which the rights and duties are attributes. But not all human beings are persons, as was the case in Old England when there were slaves.
Right now, the officer's going to take a look at my affidavit of truth. I've stated that I'm not driving, I'm traveling. Right there, for my own protection, I'm filming it. I'm wondering what he's going to do. He's reading my affidavit of truth right now. Yeah, so I'll get back to you. He's also stated that I'm under obligation to carry photo ID, which I'm obviously not. That's the officer right there, car 77. So, hopefully, yeah. There we go, car 77. Officer did not state who he was. There's my dad. Can you hold that? I don't have gloves. Here, you want them? Mine? Yeah. There's another police officer showing up. I've already informed the officers of my rights, this and that. Cold. Officer, I just want to let you know I'm activating my fee schedule. It's the middle of winter. I am cold right now, and you're harassing me right now. So my fee schedule will be activated in 3 minutes. I suggest you contact a superior officer. Read that affidavit of truth.
We're reading that right now, sir. We're trying to get...
I know, I'm just freezing cold. Okay. I'm freezing cold, so... Okay. So, summed up, I've been pulled over for, I guess the cops saw me right there. I'm cold. Here, hold that. And I'm not trying to be a dick, I'm trying to inform you.
You're giving us a lot of stuff to review.
I don't care enough to bill the guy. He has no idea what's going on.
Well, look at that. Like the one, at least they didn't have him handcuffed you.
I know.
That one guy was either.
For the record, I also informed the officer I was operating under protest and duress.
Hey, all those documents come back.
Hey, perfect. Here you go, Joshua. So, you don't have a driver's license, correct?
No.
And no insurance, correct? Do you have insurance?
No. I'm working on that right now, doing it through, it's not a registered motor vehicle, right? So it's not under you guys' jurisdiction. I'm not trying to cause trouble or nothing, but I am getting insurance on it, but it's through my society that I'm part of.
Okay, perfect.
So I don't, obviously, like, I only use it to travel around and get my girlfriend home from work and stuff like that,
okay.
So.
Well, once you go on to the highway, you need to have insurance. So take care of all the proper avenues that you need to take. And if I make a determination that charges are applicable.
Well, there was a bankruptcy in 1933, which was the real reason why they created the Great Depression of 29. To get people to beg for social insurance. Now, here in Canada, we call it social insurance. In the United States, they fought revolutionary wars and they fought civil wars, and they understood that security was a better word. It sounded better to the Americans, and so to sell it to the Americans, they called it social security. But they themselves call it social insurance, and that's what it is. Okay, so now having said that, I'll go back to this document, which you can get from the freedompool.org online. And this was a meeting. Okay, this is what House said. Very soon, every American will be required to register their biological property. That's the birth certificate. They will be required to register their biological property in a national system designed to keep track of the people and that will operate under the ancient system of pledging. By such methodology, we can compel people to submit to our agenda, which will affect our security as a chargeback for our fiat paper currency. Every American will be forced to register or suffer not being able to work and earn a living, the sin. They will be our chattel. That means slaves, means collateral. You're secured as collateral. They will be our chattel, and we will hold the security interest over them forever. By operation of the law merchant under the scheme of secured transactions. Americans, by unknowingly or unwittingly delivering the bills of lading to us, will be rendered bankrupt and insolvent, forever to remain economic slaves through taxation, secured by their pledges, the birth certificate. They will be stripped of their rights and given a commercial value designed to make us profit, and they will be none the wiser. For not one man in a million could ever figure out our plans. And if by accident one or two would figure it out, we have in our arsenal plausible deniability. After all, this is the only logical way to fund government, by floating liens and debt to the registrants in the form of benefits and privileges. This will inevitably reap us huge profits beyond our wildest expectations and leave every American a contributor to this fraud, which we will call social insurance. Without realizing it, every American will insure us for any loss we may incur in this manner. Every American will unknowingly be our servant, however begrudgingly. The people will become helpless, and without any hope for their redemption, we will employ the high office of the president of our dummy corporation to foment this plot against America. This is a certified true copy of my live statement of birth. You can get this by applying for it at the Registrar General. They'll give it to you. And it's very interesting because this is where it all began. This is the foundation document. All identification is generated from this document. And so if the foundation document is no good, anything that's made from it is no good. That means driver's licenses, health cards, everything. Now what they did here, this is exactly what he meant when he said, soon every American will be required to register their biological property. Now your parents didn't realize what they were doing when they filled this out, and these didn't exist before 1933. Birth records were recorded in scripture, and these only came into being in 1933 when they hatched this plan. They created a corporate fiction with a name just like yours. In doing this, they registered and monetized the spirit and soul of a living being. This denotes ownership. And when your parents were tricked into filling this out, they allowed your spirit and your soul to be monetized. And futures were sold on you.
Spirit and soul.
Now, this is my birth certificate. This is actually a share. See this red number? This A, I'm born in Canada, this is a Class A share. Now, this is called a CUSP number. And all securities require a CUSP number. And that's what this is. And you are held as collateral to secure the debt, which our government owes to international bankers. So you and me and all these people here are actually collateral. And we don't even own our lives. We are chattel. And we believe we're free. I made an application to the Registrar General, and I got my original social insurance application. Now, before they sent it to me, they put a little piece of paper over this before they photocopied it, because my friend has his, and they didn't block this out, and when you hold it up, you see Bank of Canada. It is said that the best slaves are the ones who don't know that they're enslaved, and we all have invisible chains on us, and we don't know it.
What truth?
That you are a slave, Neil. Like everyone else, you were born into bondage, born into a prison that you cannot smell or taste or touch. A prison for your mind.
We're talking about big bucks. We're not talking about hundreds of millions or even hundreds of billions now. We're talking about trillions of dollars. The obligation is immeasurable. Nobody can measure it.
This door's wide open now. It's gonna happen, whether you like it or not.
Do you notice that they have the same amount of ink on them? Do you notice that they're made out of the same virtually worthless stuff? It's paper. Did you get it? It's paper. When we create money, we have created an instrument of value that has no value of its own. And it's just as expensive or inexpensive to print the 20 as it is to print the 1. In January of 1913, in December of 1913, he signed the Federal Reserve Act, bringing the Federal Reserve System into place in America, and did what Thomas Jefferson said must never happen. He took the control of the money away from the people by taking it away from the Congress and gave it to a group of private individuals who have to pay taxes on the money they loan the government.
The thinkers, the artists, the scientists, the inventors stood alone against the men of their time. Every new thought was opposed, every new invention was denounced. But the men of unborrowed vision went ahead. They fought, they suffered, and they paid, but they won. No creator was prompted by a desire to please his brothers. His brothers hated the gift he offered. His truth was his only motive. His work was his only goal. The creation which gave form to his truth. He held his truth above all things and against all men. He went ahead, whether others agreed with him or not, with his integrity as his only banner.
When Allah spoke of riba in the Quran, He was speaking about lending money on interest. And we've explained why He has prohibited it. If you allow money to be lent on interest, then the rich will remain permanently rich and keep on growing richer. And the poor will be imprisoned in permanent poverty and grow constantly poorer. And if the one who wants to rule the world can get the rich on his side, then he will use the rich to control the poor, to control the world.
Remember Live Aid in 1985, that symbol of concern and generosity? Did you know that during that year, the hungriest countries in Africa gave twice as much money to us in the developed world as we gave to them? There was another famine last year. Perhaps you were one of those who took part in Red Nose Day. Did you know that before that day was over, the equivalent of all the money that Comic Relief had raised in Britain, about £12 million, had come back to the rich countries? For every day this amount is given by the poorest to the rich has interest payments on loans that most of them never asked for or knew existed. In other words, contrary to a myth long popular in the West, it's been the poor of the world who've financed the rich, not the other way round.
Congress tells the Treasury Department the Fed will loan us $1 billion, print $1 billion in U.S. Treasury bonds. So for $1,000, they print $1 billion of bills, of bonds. Those bonds are given to the Federal Reserve, $1 billion. Now the Federal Reserve in bonds plus interest. The Federal Reserve then gives the bonds to the government to pay its bills. But watch me, because you're not thinking. The government needed $1 billion. They borrowed $1 billion. But the Federal Reserve said, we'll loan you the $1 billion plus interest. But it only prints the $1 billion. So the interest payments are never created and put into the system. So how is the government ever going to pay them back?
You don't think that it's what the national debt is
The
important?
national debt measures the wealth.
The national debt, don't we have to...
The wealthier we are.
The larger the
The national debt, it's an indication of the wealth of the country, you're right.
So the more you owe, the more you're worth?
I'll say it slowly, okay? That here...
Can you explain to the viewers
No, look, Jan, come on, get real. Jan, get real. I can't explain. If you shut up, Jan, I think this interview's come to an end. Someday, when you shut up and you want to talk about something, let's talk about this. Thank you. No, we're done. Get out of here.
Let's just change the subject. We don't talk about something else.
Listen, you get the fuck out of here. I'll throw you out the window. Out.
So if they had telephones then, the phone would ring from Abraham Lincoln to Jefferson Davis in the South and say, President Davis, this is President Lincoln, and we need what you have. And President Davis says, ain't our problem, it's your problem. Well, it's your problem now because we're going to come and get you. And we're going to take everything you have, and we're going to call it the Civil War and say it's over slavery. Well, it's a well-known fact the governor of Maine had 65 slaves. So
it wasn't over slavery.
It wasn't slavery. I mean, that's a nice history thing, but that's just another rewrite of history.
But it was a commerce.
It was commerce. It's always about money. In that context, Lincoln then suspended the Constitution of the United States in 1861, and the Civil War was declared. Now, with that suspension, it comes in what we now know as executive orders. If you trace back executive orders, the first one was written in 1861. The only way they can write an executive order then and now is if the Constitution of the United States is suspended. So, therefore, we come back modern day. If you mention your constitutional rights one more time in my courtroom, I'm going to put you in jail for contempt, because there is no such thing. Okay? So now we need a new pledge. Lincoln, to his credit, figured it out, I believe, before the end of his term. And that's why he was killed. First thing he did was print greenbacks. And he was going to repudiate the debt and issue currency of the United States with no interest. Okay, that was his reorganization.
Yeah.
That was his reorganization plan. Okay, a bullet got in the way of that. Interestingly, 100 years later, another president tried the same thing, and he got killed too. His name was Kennedy. That's how all that ties together. Kennedy printed U.S. notes, and he was going to issue those. Lyndon Johnson's first executive order was to rescind that order that Kennedy had written to issue U.S. notes. Now, if you go then to 1860 and 61, we got to make a new pledge. We pledge all the assets of the South. And in that comes the ratification of the 14th Amendment. In 1871, there's a government called, a corporation called the Government of the District of Columbia, February 19th, 1871. In 1878, the name of that corporation is changed to the United States. Now the 14th Amendment is here. The government of the United States, a corporation is in place, and all the districts. You all live in the District of Washington, Western Division. Did you know that?
Yeah, it's amazing. I did know that, but that kind of terminology is totally foreign to us.
Yes. We don't think anything of it, but you have to look at Washington, District of Columbia. Okay? What is Columbia? What is that? Anyway, to get back to our bankruptcy story.
Yeah, that is a good question. What is that?
They pledge all the assets of the South. All the gold, all the agriculture, Everything. The South was paid for. They had everything. The North was bankrupt because that was where all the industry was. There was nobody, it was cold, there's no money, the bankers are squeezing them. So you go into bankruptcy again, you pledge all the assets of the South, and now you jump forward to September 17th, 1929. 45 days before October 29th, 1929. When everybody knows what happens then, the stock market crashes. Roosevelt gets elected in 1932, and the first thing he does for the first approximately 100 days is rewrite everything in this country. He stacks the Supreme Court to back every decision he makes as constitutional, but there's a problem. There's got to be another pledge made because we're still in reorganization. Now, if they've pledged the South, and in 1929 they recaptured all the land because all the farmers went bankrupt, and the banks held all the paper, what is there left to pledge? The only thing left is the people, 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 is the people.
Why do they hate us? They hate what they see right here in this chamber. A democratically elected government. Their leaders are self-appointed. They hate our freedoms.
Why the international terrorist movement hates us so much. Many argue that they hate us for our policies. It is my judgment that they don't hate us for what we do, but they hate us for what we are. We are open, tolerant, accepting of others, and this is diametrically opposed to what the fanatic terrorists believe in.
They reject our respect for life, for individual rights. They reject our conception of personal choice in the way we dress and the way we educate our children, in our choice of music and art, choices I should say. It's a completely different world outlook. And therefore you're absolutely right when they say that they hate the West, not for what it does, but for what it is. It is.
We are a target because of who we are and how we live. Our society, our diversity, and our values. Values such as freedom, democracy, and the rule of law.
Where are 1% of American adults?
Oh, I imagine we could find out, couldn't we? We could use Google Earth, because some of them are quite big. There's one. He's got his own postcode.
1% of the population, what's the population? It's about
300 million, isn't it?
So you're talking about between 2.5 and 3 million, say?
Jail.
Yes. G for jail. English spelling of jail, of course, but it is G for jail.
Really, that many people? 3 million people are locked up.
Well, 2.3, which is 1 in every 99.1 adults.
All of those guys there are innocent as well, because they all were arrested for having switchblades, but they've all only got one arm.
Well spotted. Proportionally, the Americans prison more than twice as many as South Africans, more than 3 times as many as the Iranians, more than 6 times as many as the Chinese. No society in history has imprisoned more of its citizens than the United States of America.
We're doing pretty well, though, don't we? We sort of top the European League.
We're ahead of China, Turkey, and India.
Yes.
Yeah, with 148 prisoners per 100,000.
It's the 3 strikes and they're out.
That's been the problem. Yeah.
I mean, a legal system based on baseball just seems bizarre. Yes. People don't seem to understand the law. It's all very complicated. What's simple? What do people like? Baseball. Right then. Here's the rule.
3 strikes and you're out. Yeah.
Mental.
What it means is if the first 2 strikes, the first 2 crimes you're convicted of are serious enough, the third one, no matter how trivial, will get a life sentence, 25 years or more. So, for example, Leandro Andrade is serving 2 consecutive 25-year terms for shoplifting 9 videotapes. Or...
It took 9?
Yes. Kevin Webber, 26 years for stealing 4 chocolate chip cookies. It's astonishing.
Well, it's really stupid, isn't it? Because if you know you're on this sort of deal...
Yes.
Yeah.
Take 5.
Yes.
That is the idea.
Do another murder. Do a bank job. There's no point.
There's no point doing anything trivial.
If
No,
you're
I know.
going to get caught.
It is a bit bonkers. But the racial numbers are a bit worrying. And the gender numbers, it's 1 in 30 men aged 20 to 34 is behind bars. But for black males, that's 1 in 9. 1 in 9. There are more 17-year-old black people in jail than in college. So 5% of the world are American, 25% of all prisoners
Isn't the real
are American.
controversy with this the business end of it?
Well, that's true. It's also, as you say, right, so it is a business.
Because it's not just license plate, they make loads of stuff.
Well, one of the things I should have said when talking about contraband is that you're not allowed to bring into America anything that's been made by forced labor or prisoners. But in America, you could almost say, if you were so minded, that they've reinvented the slave trade. They produce, for example, 100% of all military helmets, ammunition belts, bulletproof vests, ID tags and other items uniform, 93% of domestically produced paints, 36% of home appliances, 21% of office furniture, which allows the United States to compete with factories in Mexico because, of course, obviously the workers can't refuse to work for 25 cents an hour.
I very much like to say something hilarious, but something must be done.
It is.
It feels a bit more question-timey to say.
It is a bit amazing, isn't it?
Yeah. It's extraordinary. Yeah. It's slavery by the back door.
Exactly what it is.
Expensive for you to work.
You get solitary confinement if you refuse to work. Yeah, more than 1 in 100 American adults are in jail.
Have you heard this idea about the Robin Hood banker's tax?
Yes. It's a sweet little idea, taxing the banks to help the poor, but I don't think it'll work. It's very complicated and would be very tough on the banking sector.
Which has just been given billions of pounds of taxpayers' money to keep it going.
Well, yeah, of course.
And is still paying itself billions of pounds in bonuses.
Yes.
So the tax is a charge on all bank transactions that don't include members of the public. Bonds, derivatives, currencies, speculative stuff. Is that right?
Yeah, something like that. Very complex.
So the bankers would give how much from each deal they do? 25%?
Well, no, not that much.
10%?
No.
5%?
No, not 5.
More or less?
Slightly less.
What, 1%?
Not quite.
Half of 1%?
No.
1/10%?
No.
Half of that? They give around 0.05% of every deal?
Yeah, that's about right.
And sometimes it'd be even less. That doesn't sound like a lot to most people.
No. I can see that.
And how much would it raise to help people at home and abroad?
Oh, a fair amount, I believe.
£1 million a year?
No, more than that.
£100 million?
More.
£500 million?
Well,
£1 billion?
No, it's slightly more than that, I'm told.
£10 billion?
More.
£50 billion?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
In fact, I believe it's likely to be more than £100 billion. Could be double that. Could be more than double.
Yeah, possibly.
Right, so let me get this clear. A tiny tax on the banks could raise billions of pounds every year to help save lives in the poorest countries, fund crucial action against climate change around the world, and help avoid cuts to crucial public services in this country.
Gosh. Well, yeah, that is about the, some of it. I don't know. Perhaps it's, quite a good idea.
Okay, this is a moment in history. We are here with Sam Capilano and from the Squamish Nation in a red jacket, and we're placing what's called a permanent eviction notice to the courthouse. The red jacket is from Turtle Island. Sam Capilano, who is the Squamish Nation. The permanent eviction notice is placed here because the Queen and the bankers are trespassing on his sovereign territory. This is tax-free territory. This is sovereign. Capilano, you've got some words to say here?
This is part of the Squamish Nation. It has been. My grandfather told me that when they first came, they separated, divide and conquer with the idea. Now this is known as another nation, but I know it's our land, so I'm not afraid to stand up anywhere and tell anybody.
Red Jacket, you got a few words?
Yeah, I'm Red Jacket. I'd like to tell the people that for 537 years since the two-row wampum belt was put in place, it was total destruction. And if we don't correct these here alterations that our judges in the justice system, so-called justice system, I never heard such a farce in my whole life. 60 years from now, this here Earth, there's no changing back. It'll go into another Mars. Total destruction. Don't the judges understand this, or they sleep? Who taught them? What university taught them? Where do they get their education? Don't they know they're on death row?
We just finished entering and going through a procedure at the Richmond Provincial Court. And what happened was my name got called out. I didn't correct her, which I was kind of thinking of doing, but then I thought, okay, I'm just going to present myself as who I am standing in front of her, because she seemed actually quite like a nice judge. So when she said, when I stepped up to the mic, I said I claim common law jurisdiction. She right away rattled off all the charges and wanted to ignore that statement. And then she asked me, how do I plead? And I said, I do not consent and I waive the benefit. And I think that's a really powerful statement that I want to teach to a lot of people, because when you enter a plea, you enter into a contract. Whether it's guilty or not guilty, it is their way of saying you have understood the jurisdiction that they want you to respond with. And the guilty or the not guilty is something that you actually perjurize yourself with. So when I said I do not consent, meaning I do not consent to you making any legal determinations against me, I do not consent to your jurisdictional claims against me, and I do not consent to contracting with me. Quite final with that. And because I had claimed common law jurisdiction at the beginning of my statement to the judge, she realized that I knew what I was doing, and she dismissed the case right away. So I'm really, really pleased with the outcome. After that, I actually met up with Paul Gibson in the lobby of the provincial court and went up to him and shook his hand, and he said, and yeah, you are? And I said, oh, Irene Gravenhorst, and I told him that they dismissed the case, and he went, oh, too bad. It was orchestrated that Paul shows up after the case was dismissed so that he didn't have to deal with these issues. I mean, on the stand, on the record, for being the debtor to the contract.
Oh, and I have to tell you that it's going to cost $3 billion.
It's fine, ma'am.
Okay.
I know you're out there. I can feel you now. I know that you're afraid. You're afraid of us. You're afraid of change. I don't know the future. I didn't come here to tell you how this is going to end. I came here to tell you how it's going to begin. I'm going to hang up this phone, and then I'm going to show these people what you don't want them to see. I'm going to show them a world without you. A world without rules and controls, without borders or boundaries. A world where anything is possible. Where we go from there is a choice I leave to you.
My paperwork? Yeah, where are you going then?
It's just a sign. It's a sign I'll show you. It's an arrow, and it's actually telling you that you have to move to the left.
Ladies, this is a love police. We will be checking you out for smiles in a second.
I suggest put your megaphones down and stop protesting, please.
You're suggesting that I put my megaphone down and stop protesting.
Now.
I am not protesting. I am just speaking through a megaphone, and what I do is give people like you hugs. What you need is a hug. You do need a hug. Who would like me to give him a hug? Say yes.
Yeah! Excuse me, sir.
Yes, sir, yes, sir. Keep it calm. Keep it calm. Ladies and gentlemen, please lower your adrenaline levels. This is a love and compassion presentation by the Love Police.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is a message from the Ministry for Health Propaganda and Swine Flu Information. Swine flu is incredibly dangerous and it is now transmittable through eye contact or smiling at people. Stay miserable. Keep reading newspapers. Keep watching mainstream media on the TV. You are not a unique and beautiful snowflake. You are a consumer. Go back to sleep. Your government is in control.
Thinking is boring. Thinking is hard work, and it's not worth the energy. So, if you ever get tempted to think for yourself, quickly distract yourself. Buy a newspaper. Watch television.
I prefer not to think about reality. I like to stay infantile and read about fashionable things in Hollywood and Lindsay Lohan and her girlfriend who she broke up with, because these are the important things.
Thank you for choosing to work in a corporate zone, eat corporate food, drink in a corporate bar, and invest money in arms trade. You do not need to worry or have an opinion about killing people because the mainstream media is doing it for you. So go back to sleep, earn your nice salary, everything is fine. You are just a flesh and bone human being. There's nothing more to life. Have another beer and carry on.
Ladies and gentlemen, you do look quite relaxed. This is not what's meant to be. You should be worried. Statistically speaking, the person next to you is either a terrorist or has swine flu. So please, stop looking so happy and relaxed and move quickly to your next shopping experience. You are wasting shopping time by standing here, madam.
Okay, have you got any problem with me just taking a few details?
Yes, I do. I do not wish to give my details.
You do not wish to give your details?
Yeah, I just politely decline.
You politely decline, just because we've had a chat?
Yeah.
You don't want to give me any of your details?
Oh, no, it's a matter of principle. I answer only to the absolutes.
You enjoy, I would say, making a nuisance of yourself.
But the truth is, to speak out against lies and murder, it fills me with joy. It makes me feel closer to my fellow man. The fact that someone has a bit of sanity to come out here and just cut through the BS, it just makes me feel really alive to have no fear, to be full of love, to spread my message, which I believe is a message of good. You are not divine beings. What you are consumers. Please, consume until we have no planet left to consume. What you need to do is buy things that you don't need. That's the best way to support the economy. Smiling is bad for the economy. Please do not smile, sir. Wipe that off your face. We feel that in the very near future, the state, as in the government and the private banks which run the state, are going to ask you guys, normal human beings who are normal family people outside the uniform, to control us. They're going to use slaves to control other slaves, because we're all slaves in the livestock management program. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a lesson in absolute reality. What we have here is a group of people giving you an alternate message, and very quickly, Agent Smith and Agent Smith from the Matrix have decided to turn up in nice fluorescent jackets and question what we are doing. They were questioning how long we wish to be here, who is in charge, and what our purpose is. Until we break the law, they have no authority over us, nor you. You are free. You are born free. You will die free. And there's no police authority in this world. Power to the people.
Swine flu is an illusion. Terrorism is an illusion.
If you are not scared, you will not contract swine flu. You are not swine. You are divine human beings.
No, we're not going to get in the van. You're not going to kidnap us. No, we're not going to get in the van. We've not broken. No, I'm not going to go over to it.
This is nothing personal, and I'm going to show you how much this is nothing personal.
Ladies and gentlemen, the true thing is, I know we're creating a scene, but creating a scene is not illegal. You were born free, you will live free, you will die free. You are allowed to make a scene, you're allowed to scream for joy, you're allowed to complain, you're allowed to cry, you're allowed to love people, you're allowed to hug people. And we're starting to live in a world where we're starting to feel scared. We're starting to forget just how divine and special we are as human beings. Every single one of you is the only example of you that will ever exist. And there's not a single authority on this world who can tell you how to behave in any time, any place, anywhere. You are free, you will live free, you will die free. The only chains that exist are in your mind. You can do anything you want if you put your mind to it.
You haven't been brainwashed and conditioned, have you? No. It's all the others. You're not crazy, you're normal. It's the man with a megaphone. He's crazy. So if you see a man with a megaphone on the street, he's probably an attention seeker. Do not give attention seekers any attention. It just makes them do it more.
Thank you all the city drones for working for big corporations. Very soon we'll bring about the corporate dream where every single person dresses the same, looks the same, feels the same, thinks the same, earns the same money. We too can sit at a desk for 10 hours a day giving our minds over to a machine. This is the most fulfilling thing in the world, and thank you for not questioning your reality. This is the message of the Ministry for Truth and Propaganda. Thank you for staying as sheep.
We are here to brighten up the day of the police and the security department, because quite honestly, looking out for terrorists must get a bit tedious.
Have you ever had to taser anyone yet? Have you tasered anyone yet with your high-powered electric torture weapon? You'd probably like to taser me.
Shopping is what you are here to do. You were born to shop, and you will die to shop. Please, move swiftly to your next shopping experience, and don't hang around here.
Terrorism, 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 Al-Qaeda, Mohammed, terrorism, terrorism, war in Iraq, war in Afghanistan, Al-Qaeda, Osama bin Laden, Tora Bora, Afghanistan, terrorism, stay scared, stay separate, terror, 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 terror is bad, you are bad, go shopping, stay scared.
She said, can I do beyond the pillars, because I'm not allowed to do this, because it's private property. So anyway, ladies and gentlemen, if you think I should be allowed to continue up here with the megaphone, say yeah! Yeah! I think you've been outnumbered, madam. But let's wait till the police come along and have some fun.
Hey, it's from yesterday! How you doing?
Ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't noticed, 3 actors have arrived in costume. They are acting policemen.
Okay, I should start you go down the bottom of the steps. Yeah. Thank you!
Where are 1% of American adults?
Oh, I imagine we could find out, couldn't we? We could use Google Earth, because some of them are quite big. There's one. He's got his own postcode.
1% of the population, which is, what's the population? It's about
300 million, isn't it?
So you're talking about between 2.5 and 3 million, say?
Jail.
Yes. G for jail. English spelling of jail, of course, but it is G for jail.
Really, that many people? 3 million people are locked up.
Well, 2.3, which is 1 in every 99.1 adults.
All of those guys there are innocent as well, because they all were arrested for having switchblades, but they've all only got one arm.
Well spotted. Proportionally, the Americans prison more than twice as many as South Africans, more than 3 times as many as the Iranians, more than 6 times as many as the Chinese. No society in history has imprisoned more of its citizens than the United States of America.
We're doing pretty well, though, don't we? We sort of top the European League.
We're ahead of China, Turkey, and India.
Yes.
Yeah, with 148 prisoners per 100,000.
It's the 3 strikes and they're out.
That's been the problem. Yeah.
I mean, a legal system based on baseball just seems bizarre. Yes. People don't seem to understand the law. It's all very complicated. What's simple? What do people like? Baseball. Right then. Here's the rule.
3 strikes and you're out. Yeah.
Mental.
What it means is if the first 2 strikes, the first 2 crimes you're convicted of are serious enough, the third one, no matter how trivial, will get a life sentence, 25 years or more. So, for example, Leandro Andrade is serving 2 consecutive 25-year terms for shoplifting 9 videotapes. Or...
He took 9?
Yes. Kevin Webber, 26 years for stealing 4 chocolate chip cookies. It's astonishing.
It's really stupid, isn't it? Because if you know you're on this sort of deal...
Yes.
Yeah.
Take 5.
Yes.
That is the idea, obviously.
Do a bank job. There's no point.
There's no point doing anything trivial. No, I know.
Get caught.
It is a bit bonkers. But the racial numbers are a bit worrying. And the gender numbers, it's 1 in 30 men aged 20 to 34 is behind bars. But for black males, that's 1 in 9. 1 in 9. There are more 17-year-old black people in jail than in college. So 5% of the world are American, 25% of all prisoners
Isn't the real
are American.
controversy with this the business end of it?
Well, that's true. It's also, as you say, right, it is a business.
Because it's not just license plate, they make loads of stuff.
Well, one of the things I should have said when talking about contraband is that you're not allowed to bring into America anything that's been made by forced labor or prisoners. But in America, you could almost say, if you were so minded, that they've reinvented the slave trade. They produce, for example, 100% of all military helmets, ammunition belts, bulletproof vests, ID tags and other items uniform. 93% of domestically produced paints, 36% of home appliances, 21% of office furniture, which allows the United States to compete with factories in Mexico because, of course, obviously the workers can't refuse to work for 25 cents an hour.
I very much like to say something hilarious, but something must be done.
It is.
It feels a bit more question-timey this evening.
It is a bit amazing, isn't it?
Yeah. It's extraordinary.
Yeah.
It's slavery by the back door.
Exactly what it is.
Plenty for you to work.
You get solitary confinement if you refuse to work. Yeah, more than 1 in 100 American adults are in jail.
Have you heard this idea about the Robin Hood banker's tax?
Yes. It's a sweet little idea, taxing the banks to help the poor, but I don't think it'll work. It's very complicated and would be very tough on the banking sector.
Which has just been given billions of pounds of taxpayers' money to keep it going.
Well, yeah, of course.
And is still paying itself billions of pounds in bonuses.
Yes.
So the tax is a charge on all bank transactions that don't include members of the public. Bonds, derivatives, currencies, speculative stuff. Is that right?
Yeah, something like that. Very complex.
So the bankers would give how much from each deal they do? 25%?
Well, no, not that much.
10%?
No.
5%?
No, not 5.
More or less?
Slightly less.
What, 1%?
Not quite.
Half of 1%?
No.
1/10%?
No.
Half of that? They give around 0.05% of every deal?
Yeah, that's about right.
And sometimes it'd be even less. That doesn't sound like a lot to most people.
No. I can see that.
And how much would it raise to help people at home and abroad?
Oh, a fair amount, I believe.
£1 million a year?
No, more than that.
£100 million?
More.
£500 million?
Well,
£1 billion?
No, it's slightly more than that, I'm told.
£10 billion?
More.
£50 billion?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
In fact, I believe it's likely to be more than £100 billion. Could be double that. Could be more than double.
Yeah, possibly.
Right, so let me get this clear. A tiny tax on the banks could raise billions of pounds every year to help save lives in the poorest countries, fund crucial action against climate change around the world, and help avoid cuts to crucial public services in this country.
Gosh. Well, yeah, that is about the, some of it. I don't know. Perhaps it's, quite a good idea.
Okay, this is a moment in history. We are here with Sam Capilano and from the Squamish Nation in a red jacket. and we're placing what's called a permanent eviction notice to the courthouse. Red Jacket is from Turtle Island. Siam Capilano was the Squamish Nation. The permanent eviction notice is placed here because the Queen and the bankers are trespassing on his sovereign territory. This is tax-free territory. This is sovereign. Capilano, you've got some words to say here?
This is part of the Squamish Nation. It has been. My grandfather told me that when they first came, they separated a divide and conquer with the idea. Now this is known as another nation, but I know it's our land, so I'm not afraid to stand up anywhere and tell anybody.
Red Jacket, you got a few words?
Yeah, I'm Red Jacket. I'd like to tell the people that for 537 years since the two-roll wampum belt was put in place, it was total destruction. And if we don't correct these here alterations that our judges in the justice system, so-called justice system, I never heard such a farce in my whole life. 60 years from now, this here Earth, there's no changing back. It'll go into another Mars. Total destruction. Don't the judges understand this, or they sleep? Who taught them? What university taught them? Where do they get their education? Don't they know they're on death row?
We just finished entering and going through a procedure at the Richmond Provincial Court. And what happened was my name got called out. I didn't correct her, which I was kind of thinking of doing, but then I thought, okay, I'm just going to present myself as who I am standing in front of her, because she seemed actually quite like a nice judge. So when she said, when I stepped up to the mic, I said I claim common law jurisdiction. She right away rattled off all the charges and wanted to ignore that statement. And then she asked me, how do I plead? And I said, I do not consent, and I waive the benefit. And I think that's a really powerful statement that I want to teach to a lot of people, because when you enter a plea, you enter into a contract. Whether it's guilty or not guilty, it is their way of saying you have understood the jurisdiction that they want you to respond with. And the guilty or the not guilty is something that you actually perjurize yourself with. So when I said I do not consent, meaning I do not consent to you making any legal determinations against me, I do not consent to your jurisdictional claims against me, and I do not consent to contracting with me. Quite final with that. And because I had claimed common law jurisdiction at the beginning of my statement to the judge, she realized that I knew what I was doing, and she dismissed the case right away. So I'm really, really pleased with the outcome. After that, I actually met up with Paul Gibson in the lobby of the provincial court, and went up to him and shook his hand, and he said, and yeah, you are? And I said, oh, Irene Gravenhorst, and I told him that they dismissed the case, and he went, oh, too bad. It was orchestrated that Paul shows up after the case was dismissed so that he didn't have to deal with these issues. And being on the stand, on the record, for being the debtor to the contract.
Oh, and I have to tell you that it's going to cost $3 billion.
It's fine, ma'am.
Okay.
The time has come. The electronic world evolves. Humans and data become closer. They will become one. Technology was supposed to make our lives easier. Instead, our lives grow more complicated. It was supposed to liberate us. Instead, it has enslaved us. It's time we demand a change. It's time for a revolution. it's not too late. It's time for something else. Join us.